so excited to be here with you guys today, and we're going to be discussing the first Black Bachelor, Matt James. I truly am trying to take a very objective perspective. Like, I want to give you guys the facts, and you can do with it what you'd like, but I really want to get into this conversation so we can kind of see different perspectives better, especially if you are not a Black woman and are kind of like, why, I saw a lot of comments initially when Matt James became the Bachelor where people were like, why aren't people just happy about this? They've been asking for a Black Bachelor, like, why aren't you just happy about this? So I just want to dive into it a little bit more so we can just have additional perspectives and clarity on where different people are coming from. So that's kind of what's happening here, just for a lay of the land. So first things first, we really want to lay out all the facts. So if you haven't watched The Bachelor before, or if you are just kind of newer to it, Matt James has never been a part of the Bachelor franchise. So to begin with, typically the person that's the Bachelor or the Bachelorette has already been a part of the Bachelor franchise. So they'll pick somebody from a previous Bachelor season to become the Bachelorette, and they'll pick somebody from a previous Bachelorette season to be the Bachelor. So with Matt James, the case was really interesting because he had never been a part of the Bachelor franchise. His only true tie, as far as I know, to the Bachelor franchise was because of Tyler Cameron. Tyler Cameron was a gentleman that was on Hannah Brown's season, Alabama Hannah's season of The Bachelorette. So Hannah came from Colton's season and Tyler Cameron came from Hannah's season. And it got really hot and steamy with Tyler Cameron. That's all I'll say on that. But after Hannah's season, which ended tragically, when she picked a guy that had basically entered her season with a whole girlfriend. I mean, that's neither here nor there. We shall not be diving into that further. I think his name was Jed, something like that. So after she ended it with him, she ended up dating multiple guys from her season, one of whom being Tyler Cameron. And so Tyler Cameron and her started dating a little bit following her season because he was actually dating Gigi Hadid. So he was already a model, already a talent, as they would say. But once he got this, platform of The Bachelor, and as I said, things got hot and steamy, people seeing him out there on the show, and just, he was like a really stand-up dude, gorgeous and stand-up dude, and it seemed like he knew how to put it down, for lack of better words. So he obviously got a lot of attention. Everybody went goo goo gaga over him. His Instagram followers just skyrocketed overnight. And so he also caught the attention of Gigi Hadid, who's obviously absolutely stunning. So they were an item for a little bit. So anywho, Tyler Cameron on Hannah B season. His best friend and roommate was Matt James, which is our Bachelor from this season. So our first Black Bachelor, gorgeous. He is gorgeous, okay? We cannot deny that the man is gorgeous, all right? Matt James is really interesting because he came into the Bachelor franchise at a time where racial tension was, at an all-time high for my generation, at least for Gen X, Gen Z, and maybe, I'm Gen Y. Okay, so for millennials, Gen X, Gen Z, racial tension was at an all-time high. In the past 4 years, honestly, during Trump's presidency, I would say, but especially during the pandemic with all of the civil unrest around police shootings in the Black community. So that being said, it all seemed very strategic that they would pick Matt James to be the first Black Bachelor. And let me go into why. Because you guys, I've been studying this, okay? So once Tyler Cameron came on the scene and I was like, ooh, Tyler, he's gorgeous. I started digging into Tyler, and then I came across Matt James. So I came across Matt James when Hannah Brown's season was still taking place. So that being said, I've watched, his journey per se, throughout Tyler's journey in The Bachelorette, and then since then as well. So, Matt James, it's, like I said, it's interesting because they chose to pick him as the Bachelor during this very tense time where people were demanding more diversity, were demanding more representation, and demanding just more respect overall for the Black community. And people have been asking for a Black Bachelor for a very long time. Rachel Lindsay, who I've interviewed, so I consider myself a Bachelor, Bachelorette expert, and dating expert, because though I've never been in a single relationship, I have interviewed Rachel Lindsay. I've watched at least 5 seasons of The Bachelor and The Bachelorette, and I led events and marketing for Bumble in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex for 3 years. So I have been on different platforms, been interviewed by ABC, interviewed Rachel Lindsay myself, so I definitely have been in this sphere for some time now. So that being said, Rachel Lindsay has been advocating for a Black Bachelor for the longest time, also for a Black Bachelorette, another Black Bachelorette for the longest time, but for a Black Bachelor, she has presented multiple times who she felt would be amazing candidates for the first Black Bachelor, men that had already been a part of the franchise that she felt would be a really great fit to become the first Black Bachelor. And time again, it seemed like nobody was really taking her request seriously. They didn't feel like it was the right time to pick a Black Bachelor, which we'll go into later. And then at the height of this racial tension in America, in comes Matt James. So it's strange for a few reasons. One, which I've stated previously, that Matt James has never been a part of the Bachelor franchise, which is unprecedented. 2, that it came strategically at the midst of this, racial tension time. And 3, this is the kicker right here in my opinion, y'all, that Matt James was actually supposed to be on Claire Crawley's season of The Bachelorette. So Claire Crawley, that is kind of hard to say. So Claire Crawley was actually on a previous season of The Bachelor. She's also been in different Bachelor spinoffs, I believe, like what is it called? The Bachelor, Love Island? No. Like Bachelor in Paradise and just other opportunities where the Bachelor Nation has gotten to know Claire Crawley better. She was the oldest Bachelorette in Bachelor history, and Matt James was actually supposed to be on her season. So he was already doing interviews talking about being on her season. Her season was filming during the pandemic as well. Then maybe 4 or 5 days after the George Floyd incident happened, Matt James comes on the scene as the new Bachelor. And it's like, wait, hold up. Wasn't he supposed to be a part of Claire Crawley's season? Secondly, he hasn't even gone through the Bachelor Nation franchise at all yet. And third, the timing of this is eerie. So it was really weird when he was supposed to be on Claire Crawley's season. George Floyd incident happened, and then a few days later, he's declared as the Bachelor. And it's like, whoa, what's going on? Like, yes, we're so happy we're finally getting a Black Bachelor, but what's going on? So it seems that in the past, that because The Bachelor has a primarily white audience, that a Black Bachelor, or even like a Black Bachelorette, which took quite a while to even get Rachel Lindsay into that position, was something that, might not be necessarily desirable for the audience, is how it seems, how it appeared. I don't know if any producers have specifically said that, but I'll look into it. So that being said, to finally get the Black Bachelor as Matt James is amazing. They even said that this was the most applications they had ever received for a Bachelor candidate, and probably for a Bachelorette candidate too, let's be real. And it's not unbelievable, because pretty much everybody, Black men are a hot commodity, okay? Basically, like, everybody loves our men. And then secondly, Matt James is gorgeous. Like, of course. Well, he's gorgeous. So it is no shock. It is no surprise. But the timing of all that seems somewhat disingenuous. So that brings us here to Matt James. So Matt James seems like a really cool dude. He seems really down to earth. He seems like he truly values his relationship with God. And on top of that, again, he's gorgeous. He's a commercial real estate broker in New York. So I feel like, we don't know for sure, but I feel like he's making them dollars. So like all overall, like from what people typically would look for in a partner when they're speaking very surface level, like those are the things that people say. They want someone that's, well off, someone that they find attractive, someone that shares good values and morals, all of those things. He has them, or it would appear that he has them. So now let's kind of dive into what makes it a little more controversial. Here's what brings more layers to the story. When everything popped off with Ahmaud Arbery and then George Floyd, and then they brought Matt James to become the next Bachelor, they were kind of putting him in these strange situations with the media and with news outlets and doing interviews. And the conversations that he was having were truly conversations that producers and the makers of the Bachelor franchise should have been having, and not Matt James. They were putting him in these positions, making these overarching statements for the Black community and for himself that I just truly felt were unfair. And I know that a lot of other Black women who expressed their opinions felt similarly about, because it's like, this dude just stepped on the scene. He hasn't even been a part of your franchise before, and you're making him be the spokesperson for these incredibly tense times, and it just felt like it was doing a disservice to him. Secondly, if you haven't watched Hannah Brown's season and don't know anything about Hannah Brown, something that also adds a little bit of to the situation is Hannah Brown actually did an Instagram live during the pandemic, and she was singing some song that had the N-word in it, and she sung the word. And, you know, people have very mixed reviews on, like, oh, if the N-word's in a song, it's fine. Like, you can't expect people that aren't Black not to say the N-word during a song. And it's like, yes, I very much expect people who aren't Black not to say the N-word during a song. Because if I was listening to another race's music and I loved the song and they used a racially insensitive term that was specific to their community that they had taken back and chosen to flip and recoin for their own community, I would let that be their own thing, and I would not choose to use that term as well. And so with Hannah Brown saying it, she kind of deflected from it. Then she kind of, you know, tried to make an excuse about it, and it was just it wasn't handled properly. I think that in the end she did end up apologizing and, you know, admitting that she was wrong for that, and, you know, as she should have. But in that instance, Matt James kind of took to social media to defend her, it seemed, and he made an Instagram post, which I'll put somewhere, that was basically just talking about, you know, like love and kindness and forgiveness, and it's all Gucci, it's all good. Ooh. On the flip side of that, his best friend, Tyler Cameron, actually took a very different approach to it and really flat out said, like, you know, my girl Hannah, they weren't dating, but, like, you know, his good friend, whatever, his situationship, Hannah, was flat out in the wrong. She shouldn't have done that. She should have apologized, but there's grace for that. And, you know, she deserves forgiveness just like everybody else. She's apologized, and, you know, this is a learning opportunity, and she's going to continue to grow. And I'll insert that somewhere here too. So the way that I felt like Tyler handled it personally was really good. Like, I feel like if you have a friend or someone in your life, a family member, whatever, that's made mistakes and they own up to their mistakes and they're really willing to take accountability and be honest about it, then, I mean, like, we all make mistakes. We all do things. We all fall short. And, like, that, I don't think that that's, like, the end for us. You know, like, if we're genuinely sorry and we genuinely want to move forward and do better, then, like, great. Like, that's the whole point, like, of being called out. It's to rectify your wrongs to the best of your ability and to do better moving forward and to grow and to learn and to just be a better human. So I love how Tyler approached it. I thought that it was really well done. On the other hand, Matt just, it felt a little lacking. And not that he had to speak out about it at all, but, like, seemingly being, like, the one, like, true consistent Black influence in her life at that time was kind of like, So to add to those layers, like, if you go through Matt's social media, it seems like he has a crew of Black men that he's typically, you know, with on certain occasions, weddings and stuff, maybe some of his closest friends, like his road dogs, his homies, all of the above. But you never see a single Black woman on his social media. In fact, I don't even know if you ever see a woman that's not a white woman, and typically a woman that is a blonde white woman. So going into the show, it really seems like, okay, Matt has a preference here. And in all honesty, it makes sense. Matt is a biracial man, okay? So he's Black and Caucasian. His mother is Caucasian. She raised him. It seems like he grew up not having a true relationship with his father, if a relationship at all. And so his father was the black one. And so, that really does change things. And even as a black woman, like, in the conversations that I have with, honestly, I have a very diverse group of friends, but with any of my friends, it's like, if I were to end up with a mixed race man, it would probably be a lot simpler culturally to end up with a mixed race man with a black mother. And on the flip side of that, some of my white friends say the exact opposite. If they were to end up with a mixed man, it would probably be simpler culturally to date somebody that had a white mother, because that's typically what people are attracted to. People typically look for traits in their parents to, if they love and had a good relationship with their parents, and sometimes even when they didn't. It's really interesting how that works. I don't have a psych degree, but people gravitate oftentimes to those attributes of their parents. And so a lot of the times, if you have a mixed race man with a white mother, he's more so attracted to white women. And if you have a mixed race man with a black mother, he's more so attracted to black women. And it goes the same with fathers too. I have multiple friends and know multiple people who are mixed race and have white fathers and are really attracted to white men. And they have, black mothers, obviously, and all of the above. So it might not necessarily be race. There can be so many other factors that you look for that are attributes of your parents. But that being said, we just kind of have to have that in mind. Like, obviously, Matt James is a black man, but he is a mixed race black man with a white mother. So it makes sense that he is attracted to white women. That being said, if you look through Matt's social media, he never seemed to have any outspoken moments speaking about his ethnicity, speaking about his experience as a black man. And who knows, maybe he didn't have a lot of experiences where he was able to express that in his relationships and in his friendships either, especially if he was predominantly in Caucasian communities where those things don't typically get brought up. For myself personally, I grew up with a lot of Asian friends. So it's different, like, even though Asians are also minorities, we would definitely have different types of conversations. And I felt more comfortable having those types of conversations, absolutely, with my Asian friends than I did in previous white spaces. But it was very important for me to consistently communicate, how I felt about things, and also to create a safe space for them to be able to talk about their experiences too. And, I've had situations with my Asian friends where, like, I had to, express things that were uncomfortable for me, and they did the same. And it was a growing and, like, learning opportunity for each of us. And so I think that, maybe Matt James didn't have those experiences. And I think that in Tayshia's season of The Bachelor, which we just watched, and if you didn't, you have to. I love Tayshia, my LBS, little black sis. Actually, she's older than me, so my big black sis, so my BBS. But, like, I love Tayshia, and if you watch her season, she had a very similar moment where she was expressing these things to Ivan, who was also a mixed-race man who was one of the final people in her top 3. That was kind of one of the first times she was really able to express herself in that way, she was saying. And if you look at Tayshia's social media and just kind of her past, she predominantly dated white men. This was one of those situations where, her dad is actually a black man, so what I was saying earlier does not apply. But she predominantly dated white men, and it seems like a lot of her relationships were in white spaces and with Caucasian people. That being said, Tayshia was expressing to Ivan, this other mixed race man, that she really hadn't had the opportunity to have these conversations. She had never really had the opportunity to express, even just like the hurt she was feeling about everything that's happened this past year, last June specifically. And they had a truly beautiful moment that, like, everyone basically fell in love with. Like, oh my gosh, we need Tayshia and Ivan to be the, ending couple, because this is beautiful. This is amazing seeing The Bachelor talk about these issues like racism and police brutality, and with Ivan's brother being in the criminal justice system, all of that. So it was really impactful. So similar to, like, how Tayshia was expressing, I think it's probably easy to believe that Matt James has been in very similar spaces and probably just hasn't had the same opportunities to learn to express himself in those ways. One thing that I will mention is that it just seemed like in previous things that Matt James kind of like missed the mark. Like previously I went to a church and I actually had a black pastor, had black pastors, and it was at the height of, the issue with H&M posting the young boy in a shirt that said like monkey business or just monkeying around or something like that. I'll include a picture. And, everybody was kind of like trying to hold H&M accountable, get them to apologize, get them to put better practices in place where they realize that's inappropriate. And I remember my pastor being on stage and just saying, like, I just love me some H&M. Like, can we just get a woo-woo for some H&M? And it was one of those things where, like, yikes, like, you're just not necessarily aware of what's taking place. And like I said, this was like a black pastor, and you're just not necessarily aware of what's taking place culturally and especially in our world at the time. And so with Matt James, I remember Brown Skin Girl came out from Beyonce, and he actually used a song for a video for his nonprofit, and his nonprofit seems amazing. They, help kids get more informed about different eating options. They expose them to different types of food that they typically won't get the opportunity to be exposed to. And I think it's specifically children in the Lower East Side of Manhattan, which has a higher homeless rate and a lower score in terms of the academics in that space. And so that's what his nonprofit focuses on, I believe. And so he made this really cute video, or somebody made it for him, and it was predominantly Hispanic children, and it was to the song Brown Skin Girl. And it was like, oh, it's just one of those moments where it's like, this song was specifically made for black women. And that's not to say that other people can't enjoy it. Absolutely everyone can enjoy it, but like, to be a black man and not realize the significance of this song for black women, and then to place it on a video of Hispanic children, and it just felt like you don't really understand. And that was actually when I unfollowed Matt James, because I was like, you're beautiful, but like you don't truly understand. And everybody is on that journey for themselves, like I'm not saying he needed to be canceled by any means or anything like that. I'm just saying that everybody's on that journey for themselves, and we all get to that place, especially if you are a black person that has been in spaces that are not predominantly black, and you have to explain your perspective, explain your viewpoints. And I shouldn't even say that you have to explain, but like if you want to operate in those places and be understood and feel seen and known, you have to explain. You can always, show up in spaces and not explain a damn thing. But when you have relationships that you care about and want to facilitate, and you have people around you that really do want to understand and that want to love you best, then, you explain, and you have those moments where you dive into it deeper with them. So those are all kind of my things where it's like, everything with Matt James, he wasn't specifically in this place, but it was like, let's take this beautiful black mixed race man, put him into this position, and make him be the spokesperson for all these things, when it doesn't even seem like he's actually ever been a spokesperson or an advocate necessarily for these things. It's kind of tricky. Then a few days before he became announced the Bachelor, he started posting that, he was at protests, and he started posting a little bit about his experience and a little bit about what it's been like for him, which I no doubt am sure that it has been. But the timing was just kind of like, it all felt very much like a publicity thing. Like they were probably like, oh, Matt, now, like post more about Black Lives Mattering. Like post more about your experience as a black man, because they're like creating this narrative essentially. And so once the show started, the very first episode, Matt, you see a preview actually before the very first episode of Matt sitting down with Chris Harrison and talking a little bit about like expectations. So when you actually watch the episode, it's Chris Harrison seems caught off guard, but then when they actually sit down, it all kind of seems a little bit staged and planned, which I was pretty disappointed about. Seeing the preview, I was like, wow, I'm glad that he had this conversation. And then seeing it in the show, I was like, okay, this feels planned, this feels staged. It felt ingenuine again. So basically, Matt James is talking to Chris Harrison and basically saying like, I know that there are a lot of expectations placed on me. It seems like certain people want me to end up with a certain type of person. And honestly, it seemed like he was talking about Black women. It seemed like he was talking about like the Black community wanting him to end up with a Black woman and wanting to see Black love, which of course we do. Like, we would love that. I am just taking a moment to speak on behalf of the Black community. We would love that because we've never seen that in Bachelor Nation history. And it's heartwarming to see at any point in time, to be honest. So it was like, yes, of course we would love that. But, he made it sound like, white people probably want me to end up with a white person. And it's like, nobody looking at you thinks you're white, buddy. Even as a mixed race man, you don't even look mixed race. And nobody's expecting you, I wouldn't assume that anybody that just saw you on the street is like, and I expect him to end up with a white woman. So it really felt like it was targeted towards the Black community, even more specifically towards Black women. But I think that anybody knowing Matt James' story, who's paid attention to him, watched him kind of come to this place in his Bachelor journey or in his Bachelor franchise journey, starting with, being Tyler Cameron's best friend, would not expect him to end up with a Black woman. Now, that being said, y'all, I'm watching it. Like, I'm watching Matt James season. I'm all in it. And I am in love with Brie for him. So if you haven't watched it, here's Brie. Love her. Another LBS. I love her. And Brie seems like such a sweet, genuine, gorgeous, obviously stunning woman. And Brie is also mixed race. And so I'm pulling for like one of these like Tasia, Ivan moments. They had a heart-to-heart in last night's episode, which was episode 2 of this season. They didn't show us on camera them talking a lot about the Black experience, but they did talk about being mixed race and, having white mothers or white passing mothers. Brie's mother is Persian, I believe. And having Black fathers that were majorly absentee. So they definitely did relate on that moment. So I think a lot of us are pulling for an Ivan and Tasia moment, but Brie just seems like such a cool, down-to-earth, beautiful girl, and like I am absolutely rooting for them to not only end up together, but to just have this journey together of, uncovering more about their Black experiences, sharing more of that with America, because I feel like that is impactful and it is important, and especially because The Bachelor is a show that, as we've said, like primarily has catered to white audiences. And so that being said, I feel like, having shows like this where, they do have Black main characters and Black leads does lend a new perspective to white audiences. And perhaps that was part of the intention for The Bachelor Nation producers and creators, was perhaps to bring more perspective to their white audiences because they do have the platform to do so. So if that was part of it, I definitely, give them kudos for that, even though it all does seem kind of like a marketing ploy in some areas. But doing so, like, truly is a great opportunity for white audiences in white America to get a greater perspective of, the Black experience, and also just more insight into what it is like to be Black in America. Like, this is such a huge national stage, like being on that show. And so I truly do hope that Matt James utilizes it. I hope that, he dives into it more and that he really does speak more about his journey on the show, and not just with Brie, with, the white girls too. Like, I want to see more of that. But of course, like, I'm rooting for him and Brie. Like, I just feel like, of course, like, they would be perfect in my opinion. So I really hope that they do end up together. But honestly, whoever he ends up with, I'm going to be rooting for Brie and whoever she ends up with, because I'm obsessed with her. That being said, that's kind of the gist of, for me at least, my perspective as a Black woman on the first Black Bachelor, Matt James as the first Black Bachelor, and just kind of a little bit of background from what I've learned keeping up with his journey, watching the show for the past, quite a few seasons, and seeing where we're at now. So I hope this was helpful. I am interested to see the comments on this video. I welcome discussion and talking more about this. I would love to keep doing more Bachelor and Bachelorette videos. It's fun to watch, and I think that it would be really fun to keep doing these videos. So let me know if you like it. Comment down below, subscribe, hit the like button, and let me know if you have any other requests. I'd be happy to talk about things that are popping off in this season. Victoria, there is a lot going on. So I think that this will be a really fun series to keep doing. I think that I would love to do some with other friends who are also watching the show, other Black friends, to get more Black perspectives on what's happening with Matt James in this season. So if you have any ideas or thoughts, please feel free to share them down below. And if you want me to like kind of dive into anything that I discussed previously a little bit more, I'd be happy to do that as well. So thank you guys so much for watching. See you guys next time. Bye. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe. Subscribe right now